we just want to feel connected, you know? There's all these ass backwards mental gymnastics attempts of feeling connected. And then the ones that really help me feel connected just feel like boring, I guess.
Yeah.
You know? Oh, those don't also come with a huge amount of dopamine? No thanks.
Yeah.
I'll put this off for whatever that infinite tomorrow is, you know?
When you least expect it, or even when you do expect it, things turn out better than you thought they would, better than you assumed or could have imagined. All situations lead to your highest good. Everyone you encounter can see your light, whether you realize it or not. And even when you're feeling it or not, it's just a part of your base vibration and who you are. I speak focus into the areas that you want to expand in your life, in your mind, in your environment. I speak inspiration coming from unexpected sources, people, and places. Signs and symbols landing in your path to remind you that you got this. You're loved. You're appreciated. Great things always come to you because you put out great things. Loving energy, kindness, attention, care to the people in your life. So thank you. I speak it over you, over your life, that you find everything that you need in today and in the next day and for the rest of your life. That you can just feel open and receive all the love that's coming at you from all the different angles.
Let's kick off with a little check-in. I'm gonna close my eyes. Feel free to do the same. Just coming back to the breath. Haven't allowed myself to get into a nice meditation in a week, so this will be necessary for me. Just noticing the natural pattern of our inhalation, exhalation. Just noticing the pattern you're already in. And if it'd be helpful, I invite you to extend into an even deeper inhale, ideally bringing the breath all the way down into the belly. Allowing your body to rise and fall. If you feel called, you can extend the gap of space between the inhale before it turns into an exhale. Just enjoying that fullness. Before that release into the exhale. And then at the bottom of the breath, enjoying that gap of space, that void of being empty. Maybe even find some extra space, can push out even more breath. A lot of times we don't take the fullest breaths and leave some stagnant air in our lungs and bodies. Just tuning in to the game of noticing. Just coming back to the witness of ourself. Grounding into the moment a bit deeper, a bit more intentionally. Even more intentionally if we imagine roots extending beyond our body, out of our toes, out of the soles of our feet. It's these imaginary, etheric roots anchoring us into the planet. You can see them reaching deeper and deeper beyond our body into the soil, making their way to the core of the planet. To anchor a little bit more intentionally into our mission and mission of the moment, mission of the day, mission of the week. And for now, the mission of just deep listening, smooth expression, and connection through words and sounds and the images that rise and fall through having a beautiful conversation. Coming back to the room. Oh yeah. I need to get my stretch routine back into my life. I saw you had the yoga mat out. Were you getting some stretches in this morning?
A couple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just some lightweight.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a yin yoga practice last night. That it just blew my mind how good it was.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've done some yin, so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You throw on a video or just have a few poses you like to go into?
Yeah, I just threw on a video.
Yeah. Some Adrienne?
No, her name is Cassandra.
Okay, cool. Nice.
Yeah. Adrienne's cool, but
Adrienne's cool, but I'd like to get some recommendations outside of, no disrespect, but she's definitely like monopolized the market a bit.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very true.
But she's a good vibe, so good for her. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yin yoga is definitely my flow.
Yeah.
That's my speed.
Very slow.
I mean, it's just like really like heavy on the meditative component, you know? It's like finding the stillness and an extended pose. Like how long would you be in each one?
It's like 10 to 15 breaths.
Oh yeah. Oh, breaths. I thought you were going to say minutes. That's intense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gotcha. You find that's just like a good wind down routine for you?
Yeah, I definitely notice when I'm like feeling overstimulated to link the breath and the movement in like a very grounded way helps my body to regulate.
Yeah, makes sense. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I right before the fake out of the TikTok ban, I wanted to go through my saved videos of a collection called Do It, of a bunch of things that I have not done. I have a collection called Listen Every Day, which I definitely do not listen every day. But just like the most potent videos I save in those two. The ones that could be put into action and just like really potent messages. Anyway, so I took notes of all these videos, which was honestly really inspiring. And I'm looking forward to going back into those. But the reason why I brought it up is one of them was talking about how regulation is just getting in your body. Like it's literally just getting out of your head. Like that's what dysregulation is that whatever flavor that looks like for you, you know, for some people being in their head is like mental anxiety, thinking about all the terrible things that could happen. For some people, it's just disassociating, you know? So I thought that was a helpful way of thinking about it. Cause I always, or, you know, I sometimes hear people like, you know, like Autumn is big into the somatic practices and things, and she'll talk about regulation. And I'm just like, what does that even mean? Like how to do it? So it's helpful to just remember that's just getting in my body. Yeah. Speaking of routines, I'm curious, like we talked about this just a little bit the other day, but so you just got back from like a 6-month journey, and just has me thinking like what the difference between if like you had pretty solid like morning and evening routines before going on a trip, and how that would translate to being on the road, like how much of those practices you were able to maintain or some that you maybe added.
Yeah. Well, I had a pretty good morning routine before I started.
Yeah.
a morning routine is something that I've been working with for going on like 10 years now.
Yeah.
And it tends to shift and change depending on what season of my life I'm in and what's going on in my life and how much time I have and all the things. But
True.
yeah, evening routines not so much.
Yeah. Same. Well, it is a routine for me, but not a healthy one.
Yeah. Scrolling on TikTok till you're like, shoot, I need to brush my teeth. Like, and then scrolling some more, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, translating to being on the road, the first couple months, I held it pretty well.
Yeah.
And I think that it really kept me grounded and centered being on the road and having no idea what's around the next turn or 2 days from now where I'm going to be. Like, so that was definitely really helpful. And then...
And that routine specifically was like doing some breath work, like yoga, meditation. What did that look like specifically before you left?
Yeah, mostly just a yoga practice, drinking some sort of hot beverage, and a meditation.
Yeah, gotcha. Warm up the body, warm up the mind. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find meditating in the morning versus afternoon or evening has more impact? Do you have a preference?
I definitely prefer it in the morning.
Yeah.
It kind of sets up my day just to be calm, collected, grounded.
Makes sense.
Not always does that happen, but...
Yeah. I was kind of thinking morning being nice because you're like coming out of that dreamy sleep state, and that might be a nice middle ground between literally like going from reality to reality.
Yeah.
You know, like you saw me this morning. I just woke up and I was like so groggy. Just was literally in a different reality of doing these silly mundane things, and then I wake up and like, all right, other silly mundane things to do, but in a completely different dimension. So to like give yourself some transitional like integration time, I could see that being really helpful.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Any I know you're still processing getting out of the fishbowl of travel, but any like insights or reflections and takeaways? Lessons learned?
So
like
many.
Yeah, I'm sure,
so many. But the ones that have been coming through most potently are that the world is not as scary as people make it out to be. And if we look for the scariness, we'll see the scariness. But if we look for the joy and the peacefulness, we'll see that.
I feel that.
Yeah.
What kind of scary are you referring to? Just like you're saying, like people being like, watch out for wild people in the woods type of thing, or
Yeah. Or, being a woman and having people follow you or ask you where you going and like that sort of stuff. So
you're saying that didn't happen?
It didn't happen.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
I think that part of that is just knowing that I'm like always protected and reinforcing that within my mind. But also trusting my intuition.
Yeah.
There were definitely, there were 2 places that I pulled up to, and I just knew something wasn't right. I didn't have any concrete evidence. There was nothing like...
Nothing you saw.
Nothing I saw. It was just like a feeling when I got there to be like, don't stay here.
Yeah. That's a huge skill to learn.
Yeah.
To be reminded of, for sure. And like you're saying, was that yesterday, a couple days ago? You were just remarking on being able to sort of like shift how you present in public and like what energy you carry and things like that. So I feel like maybe that is something maybe a little bit more specific to you, or that you've put some attention into that, you know? That's more of a conversation of just like, you know, gender stuff and how people are expected to present and whatever else.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of people goes unchecked, examined.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I think.
I wonder if that plays a role as well. You know what I mean?
Oh,
just your energetic, like also trust in yourself. I think that's huge. I think that's primary, really. Like you said, if we go into an interaction or an environment with fear, that's like kind of showing up with a magnet for fearful things to be attracted to us. You know what I mean? Whereas like showing up with a confidence and a joy and an openness attracts those types of energies. And there can be a messy in between as well. Mm-hmm. But I think that is a huge factor at play.
Yeah, in terms of like gender and like energy, I feel like I was definitely embodying a lot of masculine energy during this trip.
Yeah.
Being in new environments and being around new people, I think, you know, in a very like action forward forward way. Definitely embodying a lot of masculine energy.
Yeah.
But there were definitely times within the trip where either I'm with a group of friends that really sees me and values me, where I'm able to like embody that feminine more, or being in the woods and like nobody's around and I'm just like with nature.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like even today, the topic of like masculinity, femininity, I feel like it's so confusing to most people, even to myself, because like I have my understanding, or I wouldn't say understanding, but relationship to these words, you know, and I tend to I feel like I'm always making translations in my brain to like the 5 words that I actually relate to. Which are these 5 words? Or these thousands of expressions really pointing towards, you know?
Yeah.
To me, like masculine is just like yang energy, feminine yin, which has like nothing to do with sexuality or gender even at all.
Not at all.
You know? But I think most English speakers hear masculine and feminine and immediately think male, female sort of dichotomies.
Absolutely.
Or dualities. And I just think that's where it gets confusing, because these are just polarity, these are just energies, you know, like negative, positive, which even those are confusing because we have negative and positive connotations to each of those words, you know, that one's good and one's bad.
Right.
You know, but that's not what those 2 words are supposed to mean.
Yeah.
Like additive and subtractive and pulling and pushing and things like that, you know.
It makes me think of, I'm pretty sure it was an Alan Watts lecture that I was listening to where he was talking about the 2 sides of a coin.
Yeah.
And then having the greater perspective that it's all just one coin.
Yeah.
And they're inherently linked. There's no separation between them.
Right. Like in the yin-yang symbol, you know, there being the piece of the black piece and the piece of the white piece and the other half, you know. I feel like with the coin metaphor, it's like heads doesn't have tails in it, but they share the rim or the what would you call that? Yeah, like the rim of the coin.
Yeah.
You know? Which one is that, heads or tails? It's like, no, that's what connects them, you know. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like duality paradigm that I feel like is very prominent in the the larger overriding or overarching scientific materialist paradigm that most people are operating within, whether they want to be or not. That's just kind of that's the fishbowl. Yeah. Like I can be aware of this non-duality fishbowl or lack of bowl, but I'm still in this fishbowl. I still have to I still have to use English, and I still have to orient to other people not seeing things in as broad of a perspective sometimes, and again, to my point, I'm not always at that bird's eye view either, because how can you be if you still have to play the game of duality to survive and stuff?
Yeah, we still have this body to mend to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think it's really freeing to tap into those truths, I would say, tap into that perspective of just zooming out, not even like a little bit, but like as far as you can, and see how like everything is each other. All of the bad things in our lives often lead us to liberating moments and growth and positive things and all of that stuff, Have you ever delved into Taoism at all?
A little.
Yeah.
Not too much.
Yeah, it's one of my favorites because it just feels so neutral. But even that, like, kind of reveals a bit of like my perhaps overly yin nature. Like I feel like Taoism is a very yin philosophy, because specifically in like China and Eastern areas close to China, they would pair Taoism and Confucianism. That was kind of like the paradigm of whenever. I don't know if that's true anymore. But yeah, the Taoism of like non-duality, flow, blah, 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 nothing is everything, everything is nothing, blah, 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 blah. Things are not as they seem. It's better than it looks, type shit. Just very, very flow, very yin. And Confucianism being like the exact opposite, like such rigid structure of like how, I guess, Chinese people or whoever is practicing that, but it seemed more a part of their culture. But to have the two of them, I feel like that's even stronger than me just going into Taoism and being like soothed by this like intellectualization around that things are okay even when they don't seem to be, that type of thing. But then that more masculine or yang approach or whatever, the more active being like, no, but yeah, like, yes, things are perfect. Yes, it's flowy, but like, how are we going to structure our lives, our infrastructure to like better or more harmoniously allow for the flow to be directed in a way that everyone has access to this information, to the resources that we need, to, the very real 3D practical focuses and needs for the body, again, like out of the mind into the body type of focuses. So anyway, all that to say, like, they need each other for sure.
I agree. I feel like that was one thing that was really present in like Boulder area of Colorado, was a lot of spiritual people, where it's like they're in touch with themselves and what's greater.
Yeah.
But also so practical. Talking about solutions to climate change and figuring out ways that we can live harmoniously together and ride our bikes everywhere. And that was something that really drew me to that area. It was the balance that it allowed. It's like, oh, we have these structures, so yes, then we can flow into them.
Yeah. Yeah. And that they're what allows the flow,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Because if our structures are mangled and disorienting and scattered, it's hard to flow within a messy environment, to just kind of put it in that metaphor.
Yeah.
Yeah, you mentioned Boulder, I feel like a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like you were pretty attracted to that like community.
Yeah, I definitely am.
Yeah.
They are definitely doing the work
Yeah.
in terms of structurally, but also with one another inside of their relationships. I see a lot of people who are aware of their actions and not afraid to take accountability for those actions.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that really inspires me and gets me, it just gets me activated to like plug in and do more of that work for myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Inspiration. Yeah, I mean, people talk about the work, do the work, shadow work, whatever kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Work it. Well, what do you feel like the work is for you? Like, it's so ambiguous is my point. Shadow work is so ambiguous. The work is even more so.
Yeah, I agree.
You say they're doing the work, like it's got to be different for each individual. I'm curious what that looks like for you right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely different for every single person.
And in different phases of our life
Very
as
true.
well.
Well, I guess the work that I've been leaning into throughout this trip and also bringing back into my life is that letting go of expectations and judgments on myself and others, and letting go of like the fear of being judged from others. So really just like finding that inner strength to be my full, authentic, silly, sometimes too silly self. And just like owning it and recognizing that I'm not everybody's cup of tea, that I don't have to please everybody.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah. And if somebody has a problem with what I'm doing or saying, trusting them that they're going to approach me and like have that conversation
or
with
do
me.
the work within themselves to clear out whatever that incongruency in themselves is, because that's what it is anyway. It has almost nothing to do with you.
Yes and no.
Yes and no, in the sense that like I think that we play roles for each other, and oftentimes we have to play the role of not being the coddler or the soother, but the perpetrator of triggering other people's shadows, and sometimes that comes through us expressing our shadow is going to trigger other people's shadows as well, but yeah, again, from that sort of zoomed out perspective, like, we're all just kind of reflecting our own energy into and from one another. I'm projecting my own expectations of whatever exists in my psyche as far as what a human is and what a Mar is, and all these things into like this very moment. I'm projecting that for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm also reflecting what I believe is true about humanity and what it means to be a Sean and things like that from you.
Yeah.
And that's a constant dance that is always happening. So yeah, it's like how self-aware can we be about that process is helpful. And you're speaking self-awareness about like wanting to put to rest the ways that people pleasing or having expectations, or as you said, judgments, things like that, in the ways that that's not helping you, it's not serving you, as people say.
Yeah.
But I'm curious because I have a lot of self-awareness around my weaknesses. But as far as like, how do you actually let those things go? What does that process look like for you? Do you have clarity around that? How to let go of those expectations and things like that?
Yeah, I just got chills. I think it really has to do with just showing up authentically and vulnerably.
Yeah.
And
Speaking about it when it comes up.
speaking about it when it comes up, because it's so not easy, but like simple to just like push it down.
Mhm.
Like, oh, I am feeling this way about this thing, but it's easier just to like go with the flow and keep the conversation rolling and like,
Even with an intention to bring it up tomorrow.
yeah, exactly.
You know, we know about how tomorrow never turns into today.
Yeah, and with
Rarely turns into today.
yeah, and like bypassing in that way is not only like turning yourself down, but it's also not giving the other person the opportunity to see you in your shadow, and reflect what needs to be reflected back.
And the opportunity for that person to show up in themselves in whatever way would show up by having someone either give, maybe it's criticism, or, you know, if something happens, maybe you're going to give me feedback on how I said something or something,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. That wasn't, that was harmful or just ignorant or whatever it may be. Or maybe it's, that you're just sharing something about your life that's vulnerable that maybe I didn't expect to come into contact with. Either way, like, it's bringing up a version of myself that maybe could use some exercise, some exercising, some embodying. With that said, I mean, there's appropriate expression. There's time and place for these things. And then there's like we were talking about with Autumn, then there's just like trauma dumping or whatever else, you know what I mean? So yeah, that's part of the work too, is being conscientious and considerate about like the time and space.
Oh, absolutely.
And approach. You know?
Yeah. And I think that a lot of the times I get caught up in the, oh, well, maybe like this doesn't feel like the right time, or like, you know, maybe I need to like sit with this myself before it comes back up into conversation. And then it just gets pushed away. So yes, and
exactly. Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. It's like there's not one answer to that. It's I think a closer approach to one answer is feeling it out. Being honest with yourself. Yeah. Like, is this something that is appropriate for me to attend to right now, or with people, or would it be more appropriate for me to attend it in solitude? Type of thing. But like dealing with it, I think that's the main thing. You're talking about like suppressing, like, you know, pushing stuff down. That's the I'm going to leave this for tomorrow type of energy, which, yeah, I very much have been in that forever, I guess. Yeah. Not that I've never felt feelings or, you know, dealt with
You've
things.
never had a feeling?
I'll feel this tomorrow. You know, but yeah, I think that's a pretty common approach. Is like
I think it is too, especially in this world where we're constantly being bombarded by information and
pleasure and other things of that nature too, like distractions of all sorts of flavors.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so easy to just like, well, deal with that tomorrow, and then,
and especially too, like the way our culture contextualizes intimacy and relationships in particular, like this idea, or romantic relationships in particular, this idea that like there's only one appropriate relationship where we can be our authentic self, and it has to be romantic, sexual, forever, committed, you know, and all these things of that nature. And all that's fine and good, I guess, but like, gosh, that's a pretty hefty pressure to put on ourselves to find someone like that, and to put that on someone else, that they have to be your only avenue of authenticity and of emotional support, I guess.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like
that's a lot.
It is. It's a lot, and we should be having connections with other people, whether it's like friendships or parents or, you know, whoever, to fill those pieces that we shouldn't necessarily be putting all onto our partners.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, the other component of it is that like romantic partners are not trained therapists. They're not professionals on emotional intelligence. Like that's the other thing. We're so stupid when it comes to emotional intelligence in this country.
yeah.
Culturally speaking, of course, there are people that are leading, paving the way and doing the work in that way.
Yeah.
But yeah, most people are very emotionally stupid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like
ignorant, emotionally uneducated.
Uneducated is the word.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like we learned how to find the circumference of a circle, but we don't know what emotion is coming up within us right now.
Yeah, I know. It's almost a mantra specifically for the podcast, but just in my life as well. Don't get me started on the education system.
I won't.
Because I can't talk about it for a long time. Because it's so frustrating for me. It's really a point of like frustration and just massive, like, honestly, like kind of like righteous anger around our education system. Like I feel like we've been so duped, and and it's both inspiring and infuriating to me to think about the ways that we could be educating one another in more helpful subjects
Yeah.
and practices, like you said, emotional awareness. And here I am, I gotta crawl myself out of this, but I'll say one more thing.
Okay.
I took a single semester of health in my entire life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really? Like less than 6 months to talk about the body. And it was mostly like DARE. It was mostly like don't do drugs.
Don't do drugs.
Yeah.
Have protected sex.
Yeah.
That's
Here's
it.
a video of someone giving birth.
Yeah.
Okay.
You want to see some
was
gonorrhea? Like, no.
I was actually kind of wondering like what makes a body like happy, like what's well-being.
Yeah.
Like what are the basic needs of a human body and mind? That would be
nutrition? I don't know. Like,
right. But whatever, like 13 years of math.
Right.
I have a calculator.
Exactly.
And I'm not a mathematician, so it's just so silly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gets pretty obvious, like the more you're real with yourself about education system, that it's just like programming, just like it's just trying to break down the human spirit and will into submission of working a factory job or working a job you hate for most of your life and being okay with it.
Yeah.
Just getting used to that, getting used to your half-hour lunch and 15 minutes of recess or whatever. Anyway, get me out of this, Mara. I'm not supposed to be talking about this.
Okay, so on to the next thing.
Joking. But yeah, so that's a place that society needs to do the work and stop. I mean, it honestly feels like child abuse to me.
I would agree.
Like,
yeah.
Humans want to learn. Like,
They
there's
do.
an innate curiosity and like exuberance to learn something new, and we like completely slap that out of people. Like, turn it into
Absolutely.
this like, again, this duality of like being a good or bad student and like this performative thing, blah blah blah. Let's talk about something else.
Yeah. Well, just one note before we move on is that even just what we're doing right here, recording this podcast, is an educational pursuit, whether it's for you and I, whether it's for anybody who might tap on it. Like, and so, yes, the educational system is broken, and we get to reimagine what that looks like.
Yeah. True.
And there's a lot of nature schools and Waldorf and Montessori schools that are doing really incredible things with their kids. So, yes, and.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I know about Montessori schools, not enough. I know they exist. I know it's an alternative to the default, but so is private Catholic schools, which is what I went to, and that was no better.
Yeah.
You know, arguably worse. I wouldn't necessarily argue that it was worse. Honestly, I think that I'm grateful for having gone to a private school for whatever reason. But yeah, you're right. I just and of course, like if we have the privilege and access and willingness to do so, we have the ability to relearn in adulthood. I just hate to see that happen. I hate to see 18 years of a child's life be more or less like stolen from them, and worse, and being force fed all of these a worldview. A very thick, dense worldview, and then having to backpedal for the rest of their life from that. I'd rather see humans arrive on a planet and we, give them the opportunities to learn through play and to enjoy the process and to learn to listen to themselves and to one another, not just the tallest person in the room.
Yeah.
Or the loudest person or anything like that. To learn about being quiet, being still, meditating, the body, using the body, like all of these things that are like really empowering and things that, I guess I do. I wish I had learned this at an earlier age. And now I guess I feel a bit bitter about having to figure it out now. As an old dog trying to learn some new tricks type shit. You know what I mean? Like, I don't believe too fully in that idea. But still, you know what I mean? So once a groove is grooved, it does take a lot more effort to re-groove it.
Yeah.
Repattern the brain.
Very true.
So to me, that's the work for me, is like all of these ways that I would love to rewire my mind and my brain and the way that I relate to myself and the ways that I attempt to regulate, as we started the conversation talking about, I don't think I'm alone in having like pretty mostly whack approaches to trying to regulate and soothe myself. I think that's kind of the default.
Oh, absolutely is.
So, but I just get almost tired talking about it because I've been, in these like patterns of, again, we started the conversation talking about like potentially healthy morning routines, but then the flip side of that coin is like really unhealthy evening routines, which has been my life for like my entire adult life. And it went through phases of like being really annoying and it really disturbed me, to getting to a phase of acceptance. And I've been at the place of acceptance for a long time, but then it has that seed of the other part of the duality that's like, yes, accept, but I'm not really serving myself. I'm not really serving my spirit. There's other ways that I can be tuning into flow and the divine witness. And, like, I feel like those are the things we want. We just want to feel connected, There's all these ass backwards mental gymnastics attempts of feeling connected. And then the ones that really help me feel connected just feel like boring, I guess.
Yeah.
Oh, those don't also come with a huge amount of dopamine? No thanks.
Yeah.
I'll put this off for whatever that infinite tomorrow is,
Yeah. I feel the same when it comes to having like pretty day-to-day routine. It's very hard for me to stay engaged with my life in general. And so I say I was born to be an entrepreneur because there's always some sort of uncertainty, a little bit of chaos, which I think I thrive in.
Say more about that. What's thriving in chaos? I kind of relate to that. Like, I shook my head when you said that.
Yeah.
And like growing up, I listened to a lot of like progressive rock stuff, and there was this one composer, the dude that wrote the songs for the Mars Volta. He had a thing that he would talk about, like controlled chaos. Their music sounds very chaotic, but it's all very intricately composed as well.
Yeah.
And I always resonated with that idea.
Yeah, I guess for me, it kind of reflects onto almost this need or this want for variety in my life. Where if I get too much in the same patterns, I just start to disengage from life in general.
Okay.
Which some might call that depression, but I honestly think that it's that signal for me to make some sort of change or to get outside my comfort zone or talk to somebody I wouldn't normally talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of that like there's this Wookiefoot song that keeps popping in my head. It's like something about a monkey who like reaches his hand inside of a jar, and if he clenches his fist, it's some proverb.
I see where you're going with that. Yeah.
Yeah. You're like in this routine and like clenched fist, like can't go anywhere, can't move, like, and it really just takes.
You can't take the honey if you are not chill about it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Like I could just like dip my finger in.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to like grab it all at once.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just kind of like coming back to the flow and like having certain structures, but just letting the flow take me where it wants to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel that. I definitely relate to the idea of being attracted to novelty and things like that. Mm-hmm. We were talking about this the other day too, that my conflicting internal drives of having a Sagittarius sun with a Virgo rising. It's like I both want to be exploring the world and also never leave my house, or something like that. So yeah, I can relate. And again, balance. Like when's it appropriate? And I think really what we're talking about is just all these different levels of being real with ourselves.
Yes.
There's the level of just being real with ourselves about like, okay, I have habits that are not really serving my spirit. That's level 1, let's call it for now, for this conversation. And then another level is like, okay, let's get real about the things that really help shift. Let's get real about other things that I could be doing that could actually be even more fulfilling, that would make me just even forget about whatever the bad habit story that's been being regurgitated about or whatever. Because another way of looking at this too is like the mental relationship with things, I really do feel like is primary. I don't even want to say mental, like the internal relationship to external stimuli, I feel like is primal. But it's hard for that internal landscape to be pure because it's polluted not just by physical pollutants and toxins. We're also polluting ourselves with our expectations that these things are going to be toxic for us. Like classic example is like cigarettes. Mm-hmm. In my entire life, I've been brought up with the idea that cigarettes are cancer sticks, Yeah. Whereas like some dude 100 years ago or something that didn't have that story could have smoked until they were like 95 and whatever,
Yeah.
and again, it's a balance. It's not 100% mind over matter. It's not 100% matter over mind. It's this dance, you know? So like if we charge coffee with like internal like blessings, I was looking for a slightly less fairy way of saying that, but like, you know what I'm saying? Like if I believe, oh, I'm doing something healthy, if I believe that I'm doing things that are healthy, that maybe put them under the microscope and maybe they're not. But also that goes into like quantum physics and like our expectations of the experiments that we do. So that's a whole other topic.
Yeah.
And how that like literally can affect the outcome, because reality is not a finite billiard balls of atoms whacking each other. Like that's not what reality is.
Yeah. It's Schrodinger's cat.
Yeah, it is. Like it's this very, very fluid, very holographic mirror maze, you know? So it's interesting to finally see science start to come to terms with that.
Yeah, it's catching up.
But so slowly. I mean, quantum physics came out 100 years ago. And we've been so, even Einstein was very resistant to acknowledging those ideas because we have a whole society that's built around Newtonian physics.
Right.
It's a different paradigm. And unfortunately, humans have been operating for a long time thinking that anything outside of their bubble is a threat, rather than seeing something outside and being like, oh, cool, in a real scientific way. Being like, oh, cool, how can we integrate this and expand our bubble?
Yeah.
You know? Anyway. All the tangents that I shouldn't get into right now. But what was reel me back. What were we talking about? The layers, self-awareness,
layers.
change in habits, cigarettes, whatever. Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Just the internal versus external dance. To bring it into balance. To be real with ourselves. What actually, you know, back to the coffee. Does it make me feel good in my body, you know? Or does it make me anxious? Let me be real with myself.
Right.
Like, a lot of times it just makes me anxious.
Yeah.
So
And
maybe it's out of
sometimes it's
balance.
both.
Yeah.
It's like I am kind of anxious, but I'm also really awake and excited. So,
Just being real about like what's the medicine that I actually need,
yes.
and what medicine will actually like supply that in a conducive, consensual manner, you know? Because sometimes we take medicines and we know that there's a little tax for it, right? But it's worth it.
Right. Every medicine bottle that you see has side effects.
Absolutely.
But-
And another quote that I think about a lot, I feel like is really true, is that the difference between medicine and poison is in the dosage.
It's very true.
And that's very independent to the moment and to the individual. You know, something that could be a dosage of a thing that was medicine yesterday may be poison today.
Yeah.
Because maybe you already took that medicine, you don't need it again. You know? But
Yeah,
again, we get fixated on these little like ideas of what's going to help and what we attach that we get emotionally attached to these things, and then now we're trying to soothe ourselves through this rather than being like more rigid about it in that way, like being more like, again, real with ourselves. So
Yeah. So how do you get real with yourself?
about what?
About
Anything?
life. Yeah.
I think talking to people helps. I don't have much of a relationship with journaling. I've been trying to get back into that a bit. Journaling for me has been like more just like documenting insights that come up through conversations. I like to be really brief with journaling these days, because when I was in college, like in more of a rock bottom era of my life, I used journaling as like classic, like diary dumping type stuff, and that felt really icky to have a document of like my insanity, you know? Like it'd be all this like dark shit, and then I would like smoke weed, and then it'd be all manic and like high, and then 3 hours later it'd be, you know what I mean? It was just like really gross. So I felt like it was just a extension of the woe is me pattern that I was in. It was just like feeding into the victim mentality that I had pretty heavily at the time.
Yeah.
So yeah, what helps me get real, I think, is like being honest with myself and other people, you know. And I feel like I'm honest with myself on the inside, like in layers, you know. Maybe up here I'm being honest, but like my body's not being honest or something. And it can help to like speak that out loud with people, but then that also has been a bit of a pattern that I've noticed in myself, that I don't want to be in this like codependent pattern of like needing to womp womp to someone, and then they're like, oh,
Right.
you know, like, okay, I can coddle you for like 5 minutes. And I'm like, that sounds nice. And then it's just a coddling codependency pattern. And that's not it.
No.
So I think now I'm in this period of like kind of just being very avoidant with other people and myself, because I don't want to regurgitate the codependent cycles that I've experienced in my life. Yeah. But also like the internal avoidance is definitely not it either. So yeah, I guess this is a way of getting real. It's just, I don't know. I get disheartened because I feel like it's not that hard for me to be honest with people that I trust. But it has proven difficult to stay consistent with being devoted to change, to being devoted to health and well-being in that way. So I just feel like I've burnt myself so many times that I've kind of like annoyed myself, and even like talking about it or getting excited about making change, because I feel like I've failed so many times. It's kind of part of the spiral that I feel like I'm in right now. It's not wanting to commit to something because I am almost convinced that it will fail, you know?
And
Which is just
can I
not
offer a
great.
reflection?
Please.
Okay.
Yes, we're this far. Let's not end on that note.
Well, just like, yeah, I definitely noticed myself going into those sorts of things too. But yeah, having it's all perspective, as you know. Like if you expect that you're going to fail, you're going to fail. If you're expecting that you're going to succeed, you're going to succeed most of the time.
Well, that's the interesting one, because I feel like I have gotten excited about stuff enough that I expect it to work, but something breaks down. I guess somewhere along the line I sabotage myself, or that's probably it. That's probably the key, is that it's probably like I get to a point where my body is operating in such a different way that like the gravity in my psyche is like, no, you're not you anymore. That's not how we be.
Yeah.
Come back down so I can feel like me.
Right.
You know?
Yeah. The consistency is where I fall off too. It's like, yeah, I'm going to journal for the next 15 days straight. And then I skip a day, and then I'm like, well, okay, I'm back to it. And then I end up missing a day again. I'm like, well, I've already missed 2 days, so I guess I've failed.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Just like tiny little off tracks. You'll make a let's get all the way off track.
Right.
Okay.
And there's somebody makes videos about it, but just like, well, I spilled a little coffee. Might as well just like knock it off the counter.
Yeah.
It's like,
So that what you're describing sounds maybe more so on the spectrum of like perfectionist sabotage.
a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know what you would call mine, but it feels a little different. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of, at least what I'm hearing is that like your body is like not ready to shift, or like not.
Yeah, it doesn't feel safe to.
Yeah.
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 On some level. Yeah. Which is weird. And that's the part of the conversation that I get to, that I just feel like I hit a brick wall, and that's why I am disinterested in having these conversations too much these days, because like I get to this point in the conversation and I just don't have the answers, and that's frustrating. It makes me feel defeatist about it. But yeah, I mean, I'm calling that in. I've been calling it in for a while. It's like, what is the somatic practice? Like, I do feel like it's like nervous system work is the work for me, you know? Nervous system work is the work for me.
Is that your new hit that's coming out?
No, that's not it.
Okay.
That's the B-side.
Okay.
Yeah. I feel like I know that it's some sort of somatic practice. I just don't know what the practice is. I don't know what the modality needs to be. But I do recognize that I've been like trying to use my mind to heal my body, and the body doesn't speak English.
Yeah.
I've said that a million times.
Body doesn't speak English.
It's always true, but I still haven't done much about it. So anyway.
Yeah, it's like learning the language of the body.
Yeah. Yeah. And I can get excited about that, I guess.
I guess.
I mean, really, there is definitely a little like ego gremlin in me that does not want to die. That this little gremlin that's had the wheel, you know, of my solar plexus, the wheel of action, you know, has been held by this like wounded, shitty little thing, you know, inside me. And yeah, it doesn't want to like relinquish its control over my life, over my identity. That's ego. You know, we all got it.
Yeah.
It's different expressions of it, but that's what it is. And the ego doesn't want to die. But it barely even exists anyway.
Right.
That's the trippy thing about it.
And it's all a part of you, like.
Yeah. And it's supposed to be working for the higher me, not the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Dang. All right. Anyway, so I guess that's my homework, is to figure out how to regulate my nervous system or whatever. Rewire it. Well, what's your experience with that? Like, have you done much like nervous system work?
A little bit.
Yeah.
Not like a whole lot, but yin yoga is like.
That's true.
lot
Yoga
of-
is like got to be like the most accessible access point to, nervous system stuff. That's
Yeah.
true.
Like, kind of just puts you into your body. But I learned like a vagal nerve reset at one point, which has been really helpful, and I can show it to you if you want.
Okay. Very cool.
But it helps you tap into your parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah.
So rest,
Yeah.
digest.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like that's what I struggle with. Like, for whatever reason, I feel like I just reach like a certain time of day and I'm just like kind of restless. And I don't know, right now it's making me think about how like people have said that like the male circadian rhythm or whatever, like whatever the male version of like a menstrual cycle would be, like rather than it being like 28 days, it's like 28 hours or 24 hours or something like that. Makes me think like I have my period every night at like 7 p.m. and I'm just like just can't be chill. I don't know. But it's so inside. It's not like I turn into a big, like yelling at people or anything like that. But it's like, yeah, it's weird. It's like I need something to soothe me by the time the sun's down, and yeah, it's weird. So that's a good thing to be aware of in myself, to look out for and not be blindsided by or just completely ignorant to. So yeah, all of these things are part of that, building that self-awareness. Yeah. And I think just something that's coming to mind right now is like, in terms of self-awareness, like I think a lot of us think of awareness as an intellectual thing, and it's really not. It's really much more broad scale than that. Yeah, awareness is physical action and intelligence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And relational too.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one that I've been really working on.
Just being aware of like how your actions affect other people and stuff like that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, how my communication prompts reactions from other people, and like how I'm communicating with myself. Yeah.
Yeah, gotcha. Heck yeah. Well, that was a fun little therapy session for me. Thanks.
Yeah, me too. Like,
Didn't expect it to go to that territory, but I guess that's what needed to come through. I do like to end podcasts with the question of: is there anything that you wanted to bring up that you didn't get a chance to? And B, is there anything from the conversation that you would like to highlight? Ideally, like an action step that we can bring into our lives from this point on. But anything at all you'd like to highlight?
yeah. One of the lessons that I've learned from the trip is that love is around every bend. And if we keep looking behind us, we won't see the love that's in front of us.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, that's a really good one.
And then in terms of highlights, like what even just happened? I
feel like that, I mean that's a great thing to end on for sure. I love that does highlight a lot of what we were talking about, of like the vibe that we carry into an environment is very much what we're going to see reflected, you know? So if we can not expect to find love around the corner, but show up around the corner with the love already activated, you know, then it's a celebration, not like a discovery or a, you know what I mean? Like, oh, love, I missed you. It's like,
Right.
I am love, you
Yeah,
know,
I'm
let's
here.
celebrate. Yeah, right.
Come on in.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I were to highlight anything, I mean, now I'm just like very mentally preoccupied by all of that therapeutic sharing I just did and my own homework, and, you know, just getting educated on what really is helpful with somatic practices, physical practices of being in my body and soothing the nervous system and creating neural shifting in that way. From the body to the mind, not necessarily the other way around, which I feel like is my tendency to be very cerebral. This is where I live. You know, like when we were talking with Autumn and she was talking about like sort of seeing herself from like a third party view, like I couldn't relate to that at all. I'm like,
Really?
I'm always up here, like I'm right in my eyes. It's where my consciousness is, like boom, boom, boom. I'm such a heady, just classic heady archetype. Can't even imagine what like living in the heart for more than 4 seconds at a time would feel like. But it's practice, and I like practicing it anyway. That'll maybe be one of the primary somatic practices, just descending into the heart, just like coming back to that. Not just coming back to the breath. Like that's been a practice for a decade or so for me. It's like, now come back to the heart, to the center. Yeah. Sweet. Well, thank you, Mara.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Thanks for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Till next time.